given this episode is we're supposed to be interviewing you about your Preacher Wakesurf company that you started. I guess we should talk about that at some point. But
Yeah, that is true.
um,
Anyone who has one of the hoodies, which isn't that many people, but they always wear it. So that's,
I honestly wear it all
um,
the time. Like it's my
yeah.
daily go-to.
I mean, I guess you like designed it, so you're just complimenting yourself.
It's just it's impactful.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess so. Our podcast, obviously, where it's about like showing behind the scenes of people trying to create things, getting started. Preacher was Wakesurf brand was a big one, and you did it, which is pretty impressive. And we thought it was worth an episode here, so I think it'd be cool to jump into that and get, I guess, starting with like just the background of where you got the idea and what motivated you to launch a company. Because obviously, getting a company started is quite a bit of work, as um, you discovered. But yeah, curious where you got started.
Yeah, I mean, so I guess the very basic background is I was always into well, I guess I did wakeboarding growing up and all the water sports. Then wake surfing came around probably like 2010, and then once we did it once, that was like all we did, and we noticed that was like basically with everyone on our lake, it was the same. Like you never saw anyone wakeboarding or anything like that. So I think that was kind of like in the back of my head that like you could just see in real time that this new thing came and it basically like immediately took over all the other, I guess, activities that were being done. So that was kind of in the back of my head, but I didn't really think too much of it. But I was just like really into wake surfing, really enjoyed it. Um, and then at some point I went and did my MBA. So I was doing my MBA and then I was in an entrepreneurship class and I remember it because the class was pretty stupid. It was, like, taught by this, like, 70-year-old lady who just was, like, a tenured prof who never started a business, so it was very dumb, that she was teaching a class on entrepreneurship, but the one thing, if I'm recalling correctly, that each person in the class had to do, like, a one-minute pitch for their business in front of the class, but then from there, only like 6 business ideas could be pursued. So basically, like most of the class had to join up with someone's business. So in this like 1 minute session, like you basically had to convince like 3 or 4 other people to join your business idea, or else you would have to join someone else's. So there was like kind of a bit of stakes to like have an idea that was good enough so you could actually work on yours rather than work on someone else's. So yeah, so I remember doing the one-minute pitch. I pitched it as, like, a consumer business, that was cool, surfboards were cool, it's kind of the way I went about it, and, like, literally, like, every other pitch was, like this was 2019, so every pitch was, like, blockchain or, like, some app or, like, I don't know, it was just, like, the dumbest well, I shouldn't say the dumbest shit, but, like, it was all these, like, very generic ideas, so I pitched, but then I don't know, I like the average MBA kid is, like, not cool. So, when I pitched it, I was like, "I think this is cool," but, like, to the average MBA kid, like, their brains are broken and they're just like, "Blockchain, NFTs," like so I thought there was almost, like, no chance that I would get to pursue my idea. But then, I don't know, after we pitched it, then, like, a few people came up to me and asked if they could work on it with me. I think that's how it went, or, like, somehow it worked out that, like, I got to actually pursue it, and then, like, I think 3 other people, 3 or 4 people were, like, also pursuing it with me kind of, but,
So you didn't
anyways, I
have to
ended
do any politicking to like try to win over people outside the
like, I think
pitch.
yeah, like,
Your
I
pitch was just that good. It just won everyone over.
no, like, I think you had to make groups, so then we were in our groups, and then we were debating, like something like which idea to go with or something like that, and yeah, then, like, I don't remember exactly, but somehow the consensus landed on doing mine, which was good. So we actually got to pursue it, which was good, and then once we got into it, which, like, I don't even blame them or anything, but, like, as we worked on it, like, I was obviously the most motivated to, like, actually think about it because it was in the back of my head that I was like, "Oh, this could actually serve as, like, a business plan to actually try it," and it
So
was like
do you think that's what like drew people to it then? Is just like you were like more passionate about it than everyone else? Like everyone
yeah,
else it was just a class and you were actually like, I like this idea.
yeah, I think there's probably a good chance that was the case. Um, yeah, like, I think I probably was just, like, the most into it out of anyone, so or at least one of them, so, and then honestly, there's probably a decent chance, like, the other kids were just like, "Oh, if I join his business, this guy will probably do the most work, and I won't have to do anything," which, like, was true, so, like, I get it from their perspective, so as it went on, like, I definitely did, like, 98% of the work, which I was fine with because, like, I don't know, it was like we're pitching a wake surf business, none of them knew anything about wake surfing, so it was kinda just like, I would just do it all, which was fine, and long story short, so we had to pitch a business plan on, like, one of the last days, and then for that pitch, the prof, like, brought in I think it was, like, some venture capitalists or entrepreneurs or something like that, so it was actually, like, real industry people, and they, like, judged our pitches or whatever, um, and then so we presented to them, and then the VCs or whatever they were, like, pretty supportive. I think they could probably tell that, like, of all the people pitching, like, I was one who was probably, somewhat serious about actually starting it, so I think they were pretty encouraging for that matter, and then, yeah, they basically were just like, "It's an interesting idea." Like, I think they all reflected that they had concerns about the size of the market, but they were like, "Yeah, you should go ahead and try it." So and then I think after
Did anyone else get funded or anything?
I don't
Or
think so.
launch anything?
To be honest, I
You
haven't really kept in touch with anyone. Like, I remember someone had, like, a dog food business or something like that, that I think got good feedback because apparently the pet industry is, like, massive. Um,
Oh, yeah, millennials love their dogs
yeah,
as children.
yeah, and I remember yeah, then there was a bunch of shit that was just, like, these crazy apps that, like, I don't know, like, one app one app was, like, to cure diabetes or some shit, and it was like, "Okay." Like, yeah, if that works, yeah, fund that one. Um, but yeah.
It has, what was the Theranos or whatever?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
It has
Thanos
that
sort of
vibe
yeah,
'cause it's
yeah.
just like MBA students who, like, don't have
Oh,
aren't
totally, totally.
engineers are solving diabetes with a
Yeah,
app.
yeah, yeah. They're just like, "Well, we'll just find, like, some scientists." Like, what?
This
Like,
is like the biggest MBA trope of, like, engineering guys hate is, like, you'll have just these business who's like, "I'm just gonna find a technical co-founder, and they're just gonna do all the work for my amazing idea." It's just
oh,
like,
yeah, totally. It's like, "We'll just find, like, Sam Bankman-Fried, and he will work for us, and we'll trick him, and then it'll be awesome." So, yeah, so that was, yeah, one thing I noticed. So I haven't really kept in touch with anyone. Funny enough, though, I will say I ran into someone from the class, like, a year or 2 ago in, like, downtown Toronto, and, like, he was, like, some Russian guy, and he just saw me, he's like, "Yo," and he was so excited to see me, he's like, "Dude, did you ever start that surf business?" And I was like, "Yeah," and he's like, "Awesome," and he was super pumped. So he remembered it, like, 3 or 4 years later, which was kinda funny.
"Oh, that's
Um,
cool."
yeah, but, anyways, so, yeah, that was kind of, like the good thing about that class, like, while it was dumb and, like, I wouldn't suggest doing an MBA, let alone, like, to be an entrepreneur, but it did force me to, like, think through a lot of logistics and come up with, like, an actual real business plan. So then when I wanted to take the chance to actually try it, it was like, "Oh, I was forced to do this business plan." So I had, like, a little bit of a roadmap. So I think that's probably helpful if, you are thinking about finding a business, like, try and find some, like, group or something like that where you might actually, like, have a bit of external accountability. So
Yeah, I was
yeah.
gonna ask, do you think the MBA was helpful more from the external accountability point of view, or that it was actually giving you knowledge or things that you wouldn't have got elsewhere? Because sometimes it just seems like a lot of the stuff you can learn in books, on YouTube, talking to people, um, but 'cause I know a lot of people obviously go to business school every year, but it's not clear that that's the best route if you wanna be entrepreneurial.
Yeah, I mean, I can only speak from the perspective of I went to U of Toronto, which, like, in Canada, like, no one starts businesses, so I think, like, out of the MBA, like, I don't think anyone in my year started a business, which I think in American schools is way more common. So that probably shapes my judgment a little bit, but Yeah, I would say without question, like, spending 100 grand on an MBA, if you wanted to be an entrepreneur, you'd probably be way better off spending that 100 grand on your business, like, almost without question. When I did my MBA, it wasn't really for to become an entrepreneur solely, it was like, I don't know, it was a socially acceptable way to, like, quit my job and not have to work anymore. That was basically why I did it, but, um, yeah, I definitely would not, like I think you'd probably be way better off spending the money starting your business than going to school would be my thought.
So how many classes did you have that were, I guess, like, starting a business focus? So, like, you had this entrepreneurial class, but
Yeah,
were
that
there other
was
ones?
no, that was it, and, like, again, it's I went to a Canadian school, and, like, I just think, like, our entrepreneurship culture is, like, not that far advanced, so, like, I don't know for sure, but my guess is probably at, like, other schools, there's a lot more focus on entrepreneurship, um, but yeah, that was, like, literally the only class I took that related to it.
So those, like, VCs, were they Canadian VCs or American?
Um, they were Canadian, they, like, lived in Toronto. Like, I think they were just, like worked at, like, some private equity firms or venture capital firms down in Toronto, and then so I think there's, like, maybe 4 of them, and then, like, 2 of them were that, and then I think 2 of them were just, like, prior entrepreneurs. Like, I remember one of them was on Dragon's Den, and one started some other business.
Okay. So going from you finish your project, what happens after that was did you launch it right after the
No, so
the school finished, or was there a gap there? How'd you make that, jump?
no, so I still had, like, a ton of anxiety over, like, the idea of doing it. So I remember there was one guy I had met through the gym I used to work out at in Calgary, and we were like friendly and he was an entrepreneur. So I remember I emailed him the business plan like a month or two after this class ended and I was like, "Hey, I'm thinking about starting this business. What do you think?" So I sent him the business plan and then he emailed me back and he was like, "Let's talk on the phone." So I was like, "Okay." And I didn't know this guy that well. And we talk on the phone and he was like, "Hey, would you accept like investment from me? Like I like this." And then I was at the point where I was still like, I don't know if I'm gonna do this. Like, so I was like, no, like I'm not gonna take money because I don't know if I'm gonna do this. And I think honestly what clouded my judgment too is like I think I can look at it now and be like, um, I think it probably would have been the better move, at least for my personality, to take the money because it would have been like some external accountability. But I think I was just like, oh, I don't want to lose this guy's money. So I immediately just said no. Um, which like in hindsight was a bit of a beta move, but like I just was like, what? Like, I don't even know if I'm gonna do this, let alone, like, lose your money. So, I think that kind of, like, influenced things. So, I turned him down, and I kinda still just sat on the idea for, like, a few months, and was like, I don't know," and then I eventually was just like, "Alright, let's give it a try," and then that's when I think the next step, I reached out to a few, like, branding agencies to, like, work on the brand, and then that's when I started trying to source, like, how to get boards made.
So did you do source the boards or did you go agency first or how? 'Cause I
I
remember
think concurrently.
and then so what made you wanna go, like, for an agency for branding? Like, what drew you to that model?
Yeah, if I was to do it again, I would not do an agency, but, like, at the time, I was just like, "Well, if you have a shitty brand, then, like, it's just an uphill battle from, like, that moment on," but that was my like, yeah, it was a stupid mindset at the time, like, it was like, to me, I was just um, like, I thought the name and the logo made the brand, but, like, now I view it as, like, the name and the logo can almost be anything. It's just, like, how good you make the business that determines if, like, the logo and the name are good. Like, you think of Nike, and it's, like, the name and the swoosh, like, are not that cool. The only reason it's cool is because they, like, ran the business and did cool things. But I think at the time, I was just like again, I was just like, "Oh, if you, like, fuck up these details, like the logo and the name, like, you're done before you even, like, start." But again, so that was I was like, "Oh, I need to get pros," and I think I was just, like, insecure. I was just like, "Oh, like, I can't do this on my own." Um, and, like, in the business plan we had to, like, use a name and this for the class, sorry, and this was, like, before we worked with any agency or anything like that, so I used the name Boomer Boards, was, like, the name I came up with. I look at it now and I'm like like, honestly, it probably would've worked, like, I do like the name Preacher, but, like, I think Boomer is pretty cool too, but, like, I think I just, like, didn't have, like, the confidence. I was just like, "Oh, you need to hire a pro, like, that's how it works," and that was basically, like, just my mindset.
Yeah, so you went with Pentagram, which I think they're based out of New York, but they're like world renowned, like a huge one of the top agencies. Um, how'd you settle on them? Because I think
Yeah,
you
we
interviewed a few, right? And if I recall, wasn't there like a funny story about some agency in California?
yeah, yeah, long story short, the agency in California, I think, like, we'd reached out to a few places, including this one in California, and he had done work with, like, another surfboard brand, so I was like, "Oh, maybe this will work." And I just, like, asked him a few questions. We exchanged emails. We didn't even get on a phone call or anything like that. And then, yeah, I obviously reached out to other agencies. And then I remember sending a note to Pentagram and just being like, "Oh, they're probably way too expensive, like, but whatever, I'll just try." And then they got back and they were basically like, "Oh, we'll do it for less because we think this is cool. And you're a small business, whatever. Like sometimes we take on projects for less." And then at the end of it, like Pentagram just had like by far the most professional proposal. And like I was like, oh, well, they're like world renowned and their fee was like less or like the same as everywhere else of like the other five we reached out to. So I was like, okay, this is kind of like a no-brainer. Go to Pentagram. So I emailed the other places and we're like, thanks for the proposals, thanks for chatting with us. But we're going with another firm. And the California surfboard guy was like, mad, and he was like, "We did so much work for you." And I was like, "What do you mean work? Like, we emailed back and forth, and you submitted a proposal." But anyway, so it was,
Yeah,
like, kind
I
of
think that
bizarre, and
was I think that was
yeah.
something we discovered was that the surf industry is a little toxic
Oh, yeah.
from
There's, like yeah, there's tons of, like, I don't know, they're very aggressive, I guess, so, yeah, now I know that that's not that rare, but at the time, I remember being just like, "Jesus," like, just okay, but yeah, so then that's sort of how we went with Pentagram.
Okay. So with Pentagram, what was the process that they followed for setting up the branding? Like, I think you started with names, is that correct? Like, what was the flow from
Yeah,
names to
so
getting to imagery and etc.?
Yeah, so our original engagement for them was like come up with a brand identity, which included a name, a logo, and then I think like a little bit of copy. Um, and I'm fine saying this. I think they proposed like 15 grand or something for all that. And that was like pretty similar to every other agency as well that would do the same. So yeah, so that was when we went with Pentagram. And again, my thought at the time was just like, yes, that's a lot of money, but, like, to get and I think they might have done a few more stuff other than that, but anyways, I remember just thinking, like, you don't wanna mess this up, like, if you have the wrong identity, then everything sucks, so, I thought it was, like, justified, so, yeah, and then that was so the process once we engaged with them was the naming, and then from there, it went to logo, and then from there, it went to, like, copy about, like, what the brand is and stuff for the website.
Do you remember what the other names were before you got to Preacher?
Yes, so they proposed, like, 10 different names. I don't remember them all off the top of my head, and I was trying to find the document, um, but I do remember one name was Native, and I remember being like, "I don't wanna do that one." Um, one and then so, yeah, they submitted, like, 10, I can't remember them all, but I did find an email where I saw my top 3. So the 3rd one I had was Loon, um, like Loon. The second one was Bessie, and I remember they sort of, like,
What why
pitched it
Bessie? That was like the like
so yeah, they pitched
Loch
it as,
Ness
like
monster type thing, right?
yeah, 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 exactly, like and they pitched it as, like, their pitch for it was, like, not bad, it was, like, about, I don't know, like, skate culture and skate brands. I think they were referencing, like, like, Toy Machine, the skateboard company, and, like, I don't know, kinda like the cartoony, fun kind of thing, so, And then the other one was Preacher. So I remember I said I was debating, and then I remember the guy from like I think he was like the head of the team or something. He emailed me and was like, "You should go with Bessie." And he's like, "I've worked in this industry for a while, and Bessie's the best." And it kind of like got in my head a bit, but I was like, I don't know, I just like Preacher more. So um, that was kind of what we were debating between, but yes, landed on Preacher from there. And I remember just, yeah, I don't know, I just thought Preacher was more memorable and cooler than Bessie.
Yeah, it's interesting that he felt that strongly. Like, I know at some point you mentioned when we were talking before that it seemed like the quality of the service shifted, maybe like partway through the project. Um, I was just
Yeah,
curious if like if the guy felt strongly enough to maybe I'm coming up with conspiracy theories here, but he felt strong enough to like tell you that, push for it. Maybe he had a vision in his own head for it. And then when you decide to go another direction, because they were doing this more, a little bit more pro bono type stuff, giving you a benefit. I'm just wondering if that like made him less enthusiastic and that's he pulled out of the project or put less effort in. Cause I do remember it kind of seemed like they shifted it to more junior designer or junior people within the agency, and the quality really dropped off.
yeah, that's probably a fair thought. Like, I think that that probably factored in. I do think part of it too is I think throughout the whole process, and I will fully admit that I think I was a little wishy-washy and didn't like operate with like a ton of conviction with it and sort of changed my mind as things were going. But like I just remember thinking like I thought they would be more creative was my thought. And it's not even like a complaint because I think when you just think about it from the perspective of an agency, is they're working on like a ton of different stuff at once. Like I don't know. I just think they kind of have like a set like basis of how they do things, and it's like not like they're not coming up with like a million crazy ideas for just like one of their 20 projects they have on the go. So like I think they're good at like putting together a really professional logo and stuff. But I remember just thinking like throughout the process that I found it was just always like a little boring, and I was kind of like hoping for a little bit more. Um but yeah, like I do think that I was probably a little wishy-washy on stuff, but I think as the time went on, I was just like, as we were going through the process and coming up with logos and stuff, I was just like getting a little frustrated because like I wanted a bit more interesting work. And I think that really came through once we were working with them on the board designs. Um, but yeah, I think that was kind of the process.
Yeah, so maybe like so for context, each board has its own like logo and design that's specific to that model, and then you've got the overall Preacher branding. Um, so
So
for the
So
board,
I do have the document where they came up with the first brand identity for Preacher. So I can quickly show. I shared the screen.
yeah, go for it.
So anyways, this was like once we locked down on Preacher, um, this was like once we started to go through like the potential identity. So this is what we ended up with. So this is like the current logo. Um, Yeah, so I think they basically just, like, pitched a few different, like, changes, so maybe this wasn't, like this looks like it might have been, like, a 2nd or 3rd one. There's maybe I brought up the wrong
So just to
logo.
describe it for the audio listeners, this is the Preacher logo that you're showing with the like a wake surf board with wings across it, kind of similar to a cross. It kind of looks like.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah, yeah. So, and again, I think the identity we wanted was we wanted like a clean logo that like somehow, and the identity was kind of like, oh, surfing is this kind of like spiritual thing that's like almost deeper than just typical sports. So that was kind of where the name Preacher and like the logo is kind of like a cross. That's sort of where it came from. So yeah, again, I think this is like the 2nd or 3rd round we did, but it's basically like as the process went on, like, we chose the name Preacher, they came up with a bunch of original designs, and then I think I chose one from, like, the designs, and then this would have been, like, round 2 where they basically came up with, like, a few modifications based on that one, so it's basically just getting, like, more specific as each round went on.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, it looks. I think yeah, kinda the Nike approach was kind of inspiring too with, like, black like, monochrome with color thrown in, but something that's very, like, versatile.
Yeah, no, totally. Yeah, so once we locked down the logo, again, and I think this is where I kind of yeah, I oversubscribed to, like, the idea that we needed an agency for everything. Because then the next came, like, with the board designs, and again, I wanted some help with it, so I think we even upped our, like, contract with Pentagram and said, like, "Could you help us out with board designs as well?" So and again, this is where, like, the creativity kind of I think, like, we were just totally on different pages, so I do have a document with, like, um, board designs. Second. Yeah, so this is their first round of board designs. I don't know if you can see that, but yeah, like, I think in my head, like, I wanted the clean, overarching corporate logo, but then I think we were pitching 3 boards initially, and I was like, "Okay, I want each board to have, like, its own personality to it." And this was what we were, like, coming up with designs. So you can see, like, basically each design for the listeners was just, like, a whiteboard with our Preacher logo on it, just in, like, different spots. Um, and, like, I think as we went through it, like, my thought, I was like, "These are just, like, very boring boards." Like, I just didn't think they were very interesting. So then, like, each time I would ask, I'd be like, "Hey, can we, like, make it a little more creative, make it a little more interesting?" And then, like, they would just come back with kinda like this basically, like, the logo in a different spot. Um, so, yeah, so there was, like, kind of a bit of frustration, I guess, there. So then where we went after that was, like again, I kept the vision in my head was that, like, each board had its own, like, personality to it. Is like, we were gonna have 3 boards. One was kind of like a more, like, beginner board, one was an intermediate board, one was a more, advanced board, and I wanted, like, the logos and the name of each board to sort of reflect that. Um, so when it wasn't really working, eventually I was just like, "Well, why don't we like, let's try and find, like, an artist for each individual board, and the artist will, like, fit the style of, like, what I have in my head." So then we worked with Pentagram, and then we found artists for each board, and then they came up with the identity, the logo, the word mark for each board, and that's kind of like how we started to get a little bit more like on the nose, for coming up with like 3 different unique board designs.
So, did Pentagram pitch using the artist, or was that your idea?
I think that was my idea, yeah.
Yeah, because I thought the artist was like, that was the most interesting part of the branding that resulted. Um, so it's interesting that you pitched that to them. Um, so one thing when you were working with artists is I know maybe this is because they were being approached by an agency, but it seemed like there was wildly varying rates that didn't
Yeah.
always line up with quality in terms of the ROI that you were getting. And I know in some cases, some of them were asking for royalties, I think, for board sales. Um, yeah, I'm just maybe talk us through that.
Yeah, so I it was almost like planning a wedding, whereas, like, you have a wedding planner who's just, like, getting these contractors, and because the contractors know it's a wedding, they're charging way more than they would otherwise. So, like, the fact that we were going with this, like, multinational agency, I think when they reached out to artists, the artists were like, "Well, we're gonna charge a ton," because, like, presumably this client is, like, Citibank or some shit. So, like, um, so we wanted 3 different artists. 2 of the 3 we found through Pentagram, and then the 3rd one I just found on my own, and that 3rd one was, like, way cheaper. So, yeah, that's kind of the lesson here that, like, find the artist on your own. Don't go through an agency because 'cause you'll save a lot of money that way.
So if you're doing it over again, would you do your branding just through an independent artist, or would you do it on your own?
Honestly,
Like, how would you do it?
yeah, like, I would say, like, the process of how we even did, this podcast, Not Quite Ready, is, like, we just came up with mood boards ourselves. Like, I mean, you did all the work designing the logo, but, like, coming with the mood board itself, like, I think I don't know, like, you have the vision in your own head, like, I think, um, I don't know, I think once you go out to an agency, they just, like, they don't and there's no fault of them, it's just, like, a principal agency problem, but, like, they just don't care as much, like, they're not gonna invest as much time, um, and, like, I think it's always gonna be, like, safe, like, with through an agency, like, especially one like Pentagram, it's like their clients are like JP Morgan. It's like it's not gonna be some crazy creative thing, and I don't think the people maybe I'm just not well versed in the world enough, but, like, I don't think the people who work at agencies are typically, like, artists who are gonna, like, come up with some, interesting idea, like, they're very much in the, like, logo of, like, a corporation, keep it safe, so I think that's what we noticed, that there was just, like, this disconnect when you're working with, like, a world-renowned agency and you're trying to come up with, like, identities for, like, surfboards, it's just, like, it was never gonna fit.
So when you were um, working through the ideas back and forth with the artists, were they did you find that like how is that different than dealing with the agency? So I know you mentioned with the agency you had some like communication issues, or you'd say like make this a bit more interesting and they've just come back with logos in a different spot. How did that differ from when you were working directly with the artist? Did the artist communicate better or did they just get the vision better? Or yeah, I'm just curious there.
Yes, I would say it was, like, not even, close to, like, a comparable process, like, the one thing for sure is that, like, the artists, like so again, when the artist we found on our own, he, like, he charged a fee of, like, I wanna say it was, like, $1,000 or something, like, around there, and so we wanted him so this was his name was Mark Ward, he works out of the UK, and we wanted him to come up with the psychedelia, um, logo. So this was, like, an identity for the one board we called the psychedelia, again, 1,000 bucks, like, I'm just downloading some logos so I can share. So basically, right after we commissioned him, he just, like, immediately started sharing, like, work. Like, he got to work extremely quickly. So I'll share some logos here. Give me 2 seconds. Let me share my screen. Um, okay, so I just want to make sure you can see this. So, um, yes, we said, like, come up with, like, a psychedelic logo, basically. And he just, like, immediately started working on stuff, like, within days, he sends this, so, like, I don't know if you can see, but it's, like, a guitar with, like, a palm tree, um, so he sends that, then he sends, like, this one is, 2 girls in a watermelon pool, um
There's he's got a very distinctive style. I really like his style.
yeah, and then, like, a toucan, like, chilling in a lawn chair, um, like, a watermelon with flowers for eyes.
Honestly, these are all bangers. You could have gone with any of them.
No, I know, and it was just honestly, as I'm looking at these, I'm like, it's such a shame that these are just, like, sitting and not being used out in the world because 'cause they're fire. Um, and then, like, I think what we ended up with was so this is what we ended up with choosing, but, like, this was another one. Yeah, like, it was just, like, within days, he just, like, sent this stuff, so, like, with Pentagram, I just found, like, we were going back and forth forever, and me being like, "Can we get more creative?" And, like, each round would just be, like, slightly changing, like, the placement of, like, the overarching corporate logo, and then, like, you commission, like, an independent artist who just, like, specializes in, like, cartoon graphics or whatever, and, like, it's way cheaper, and he just, like, within days has, like, submitted, like, 7 proposals that are all, like, fire, so I think, eh, from that moment on, that was where I was just like, "Alright," like, if you have an idea in your head, which I did, like, you don't need the corporate agency to, like, pitch it because it's just I don't know, it's just gonna be, like, very professional and I don't know, not as interesting. So that was kind of the process that I found.
So which one was your favorite? So you did 3, you did Kokomo, Point Panic, and Psychedelia over the 3 boards.
Yeah.
Um, did you have a favorite of them? I know the Point Panic one, the artist was,
Yeah, so I
pretty big name
can
actually.
yeah, so I can bring that up. So just quickly, so this is so as you can see, this is round 6. So we went back for quite a while, but um, so yeah, so we had 3 boards, which Pentagram did help us with the naming. So I thought they were not bad with that. But so the one board was Kokomo, which was kind of our beginner board. The next one was Psychedelia, which is the middle board, and the last one was Point Panic. So each one was a different artist. So you can see here, this artist's name was Will Bryant. He did Kokomo, and Mark Ward did Psychedelia, and then an artist called named John Contino did Point Panic. Um,
And
and
if I
then
recall, those names had a meaning, right? They're based off of surfing locations, like iconic ones. Is that
um,
correct?
yes, that's correct. Ah, that's now it's yes. It was like it always each name had something to do with like surf. So Point Panic, if I recall correctly, was like it's like a famous wave break. Kokomo, I think is like from that song. Psychedelia, I think the idea was like because that board is like a fishtail, which is kind of like an iconic shape. So psychedelia is like, kind of 1970s vibe kind of thing. So um yeah, that's kind of where we landed. Um so yeah, so Pentagram kind of so again, like this is the thing, like, we paid all these artists, and then we're paying Pentagram the most, and, like, basically their process, and it was just like, "Where do you put the cool logo?" And it's just like, "Well, we definitely could have done this ourselves." Um,
Yeah.
so anyway, like
Just
yeah.
dragging the logo to different locations and resizing it.
Yeah, totally, totally. So, again, I think it was just, like, a learning process, for, like, how it kind of works. It probably works fine if you were like trying to come up with a brand identity for like a software company or something boring, but like for a surf company, yeah, it definitely did. Like I would just go straight to the artist, no question.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's price does not always match up with the results, and I think, like, when you are new to an industry or a field, you kind of use price as a metric for what am I getting in return, and a lot of times, if it's something you care about, you're willing to spend more, but if it's your first time through, you don't always realize, "Hey, I can actually get, better value by going for the individuals, like, in this case, the artists who are specialized in branding and illustration, and they care a lot more about their work than people at a corporation who are it's just their day job."
Yeah, totally, totally. And like honestly, I think even if like we asked like that Mark Ward or anyone to like come up with like the brand identity for Preacher, like even those first steps, I think they would have done like a good job as well. So I don't know. I think it's just one of those things where it's a lot less work to just go with a well-known agency, but like if you're the type of person who has an image in their mind and like is willing to like research and find artists that aligns with your vision, then like that's going to be definitely the better route.
I don't even know if it's less work though, because it sounds like there was
Yeah,
a lot of,
we did a
like,
shit ton of
higgling and trying to
yeah,
push them to do it, and they were also kinda slow with turnarounds, so,
yeah. No, that's fair. But yeah, once
um,
we started working with the artist, everything started moving fast.
so shifting gears, the next part obviously is, like, getting the product. So, building a surfboard is not easy, and there's a lot that goes into it, and even once you settle on a board, there's, um, lots of different types of boards for different techniques and different, preferences. So, I know you settled on 3 board models that you just showed us, but I'm curious, like, the process of how you went first just finding a shaper, and, like, that obviously must have been a pretty daunting process given you're in Canada and not surrounded by surfers.
Yeah, so I think when the start was like obviously we're building wake surf boards, but I was like, we're a surf company that makes wake surf boards. Like I wanted authentic surf style boards. So I only reached out to guys who shaped ocean surfboards and basically asked them, "Hey, can you make a wake surfboard?" I did not want to go to wake surfboard shapers because I just like my thought process was is like wake surfboards is like this super niche thing versus like ocean surf shapers. They've been doing this for like ever. And there's like way more money in it. So it's definitely gonna be way more specialized. So like, and it's not like they're totally different things. Like if you can make ocean surfboards for like the biggest pros in the world, you can probably make a wake surfboard. So that was like from the start where I was reaching out to. And yeah, I just like emailed like a bunch of different ocean surfboard shapers and um just asked if they could make wake surfboards. So I got like mixed reviews, but that was kind of how the process went.
So the just for context for listeners, that I think was kind of like the core of what motivated you to do the business, was it not? Like you were into wake surfing's blowing up, but it's really just copying like wakeboard culture, like white sunglasses, that whole thing. And I think that's part of what frustrated you, but maybe I'm wrong.
No, for sure. I just thought like wake surfing was cool, but it was like the lamest brands ever doing it. Um, so I just wanted to make like a wake surf board brand that was like surf style, basically.
Because I think that the industry at that point was mostly just wakeboard companies or new
Yeah,
wake surf companies were just essentially copying wakeboard designs, which have a very different shape and function than an ocean surfboard.
yeah, I think we put it as like like most wake surfboards feel like you're like riding like a fridge door. They're like super heavy. They're like made of carbon fiber. Like you probably run over it on your car and it'd be like fine. So I think we just were like, well, like I want it to look and feel like an ocean surfboard.
So finding the shaper, you emailed a bunch of people. You ended up finding like probably the perfect person for making them, who's incredibly talented. And was that just luck, or like how was it just a numbers game, or what was your method? Were you just like searching through forums? Like how did you even find the emails to start with?
It was just a combination of Google, Instagram. I think I did a little bit of like online forums and stuff. But then what was interesting is because by the time I started to reach out, it was like March of 2020. And then so COVID hit, and then surfing hit like the biggest boom in its history during COVID because no one could do anything, but they could surf. So like all these shapers were initially interested, but then like, once the boom hit from COVID, none of them had capacity, so, like, that was kind of, like, a lot of the shapers who I was gonna work with, they, like, kinda bowed out because they said they didn't have capacity, um, but, yeah, there was just one guy who was, like, super qualified, he had made boards for, like, all these big surfers and stuff, and he was pretty easy to work with, um, he was based in Oceanside, California, and, like, we went back and forth for a while, and he basically said, like, he had made boards for Jerry Lopez actually for like river surfing, which he was like, I think these will work well for wake surfing. Um, so I was like, yeah, we want to try some different designs. So he basically it was pretty cool. Like he sent us 3 different boards, to try, and, like, all 3 of them were just, like, right off the bat, like, awesome. Like, they were, like, the best boards I'd ever ridden. They were yeah, like, it I don't think we did any revisions. Like, it was just, like, the first one he sent was just, like, great, or the first 3, sorry, I should say, and then that's what made the 3 boards that we landed on.
So Jerry Lopez, that was the surfing legend who also wake surfs, or was it river surfing?
I think river surf, but I think he, like I can't recall, he might have done some wake surfing or something, but yeah, basically our shaper was just like, yeah, like I've made these short boards for Jerry Lopez, like I think they would work great for wake surfing, and that's how it went.
So you get the models. Um, what was the prototyping process like? Because obviously it's not just the board. There's also things like, do you use wax? Do you use a pad? What kind of fins do you use? Like, how did you go about figuring that out?
Yeah, that was just like I sort of had a vision in my head, and again, it was just guided by this sense that I wanted it to be like ocean surf. So like I just wanted a back pad, I wanted foot wax for the front. And we sourced like the back pads that were like basically well known in ocean surfing. So we went with Astro Deck back pads. Um we wanted the fins that are used in surfing, so we went with Futures fins. So yeah, it was basically like the whole process was just to get the wake surfboard to like look and feel like an ocean surfboard.
So the so I think that's something that also sets preacher boards apart is they've using the wax. Um, I think a lot of people, at least what I've seen, are using just pads. Um, but I think the wax looks way cooler. But do you find it's also like performance wise makes a difference?
I like using wax way more. I think some people don't like using wax because then it gets in the boat, but like I think that's kind of a small complaint. But yeah, I think wax is just cooler, and it I don't know. To me, it rides a lot better.
So you got 3 board models. Were those the first 3 he sent, or how did you? Because you got Kokomo, Psychedelia, Point Panic. They're all got their own unique personalities. Did you just he just nailed it right off the bat, or how did you settle on those?
Yeah, so I gave him guidance that I was like, we want to test out some different boards. Ideally, we have one that's like kind of geared towards beginner, one that's geared towards intermediate, one that's geared to high performance. And then within that, we sort of had like some specific things as well. Like the high performance board, I wanted it to be like really responsive when you pump, whereas like the beginner board, I wanted you to be able to just chill a little bit more on it. So that was kind of how it went, and then I thought we would do a few iterations, but then he just, like, nailed it on the first go, and it was just like, those 3 boards were, like, again, like, the 3 best boards I'd ever tried, so it was, like, no revisions were needed.
So, um, it's COVID. You settle on your boards. Do you just put in a big order right away, or did you order like do a test run? How did you like what was going through your mind for like testing the market of like how are we going to sell these? What's how many do we order? How do we ship them around? Like I'm just curious what your thoughts there.
Yeah, when we got the 3 boards, I was like, "I think these are awesome, but, like, let's get some other people out." So I basically just invited everyone I knew out who wake surfed, to try them out. And this was sort of again, if I could do this part again, I would definitely do it differently because I thought this was good to just like get as many people on it as possible. But definitely, if you're just like inviting your friends out to try out a product for a business you're thinking about starting, I think most of them are just going to be like, yeah, it's awesome. Um, and I did find that to be the process, and I do think the boards were awesome, so I think, like, I don't think they were, like, lying or anything like that, but if I was to do it again, I probably would've, like, tried to get, like, as many random people on it as possible, like, put out ads on Instagram and Facebook for, like, free wake surf ride, try out these boards, things like that. Because I think that would've just helped with market testing. Again, I don't think I would've changed anything, like and the more people we've got on the boards, the feedback's always been really positive, but, like, I think it was an unnecessary risk just to, like, ask my buddies to do it.
Yeah, because I guess they're also um similar in terms of like their style of riding and skill level, that sort of thing. Versus I know one thing in wake surfing is like there's a big gap between beginners and experts and what they like. So a beginner might just want to be like, I can let go of the rope and I can just stay in the wake in the pocket. Versus a more advanced one where they're caring about carving or popping off the lip, that sort of thing. Um, did you find that once you got people on the board that they had strong preferences, or did you just feel like everyone was just kinda like, "Yeah, this is awesome," and it was good feedback, but not necessarily in terms of, like, honest feedback in the sense of maybe it's biased, I guess? Is that kinda what you're
Yeah,
getting at?
I do think it was honest, I just think everyone was like, "These are awesome." Like, that's probably how like, that's exactly how I thought. I was like, "These are awesome," and, like, um, which I think is fine, but I do think it was, like I said, just, like, an unnecessary risk, like, and I think again, like, none of them were gonna buy one either because they're just my buddies and I can invite them out. So, like, I think what again, if I was to do it again and it was tricky because it was COVID and, like, you didn't really know the rules and stuff like that, but, like, if I was to do it again, like, I think as soon as you get the product, you just try and make sales with it. Like, I think what would have been better is if, like, we got the boards and we put out like ads on Facebook and Instagram and shit and even printed out stuff. And we're like, try these boards for free. Like, we'll take you out and like then see if we can get sales. Like, if someone was like, I love this board, I gotta have it, like I'll buy it right now, then I think that's way more indicative of like you actually have a product versus like people just being like, it's awesome. So
Yeah.
I think that's definitely how I would have done it if I could go back.
So it's COVID. You are happy with it. You just put in a big order? How did you get the boards? Did you store them in the States and drop ship, or did you just ship them to Canada? Like how did that work?
Yeah, I mean, just because there's still that demand, that was due to COVID for ocean surfing, like, we couldn't even get people to make them, and then I think, we and when I say "we" this whole time, I'm talking, like, because my sister, Kelly, is also involved in the business, but, what we, like, did was we just were like a classic entrepreneur, we're like, "We need inventory because we're gonna be, like, selling out like crazy." So we were just, like, trying to find people who could, build the boards, and I remember reaching out to, like, a few different people other than the original shaper, because our original shaper just said he didn't have capacity. So I remember we got some boards made in New Zealand, and then they were, like, kind of shitty, so, like, that was kind of a waste of money. Um but yeah, it was, like, kinda just, like, a chaotic process because like, no one had capacity to, like, build boards, which kinda sucked. And then, like, eventually things calmed down, and, like, basically my mindset was like, "We need to get inventory so we can go in and sell," and, like, all these stores are gonna wanna purchase, like, 20 boards at once or 50 boards at once. "We need inventory, we need inventory." Um, and in hindsight, I don't think that was the best move either. Like, I think you try and sell and then meet the demand with, like, new inventory rather than just, like, building up inventory. So I think that was also which I think is, like, a very common mistake entrepreneurs make, but, um, we still have inventory on hand from those original builds because I was just had in my mind that we needed lots on hand to, like, meet the the demand that I thought was coming.
Yeah, I think that's like a common theme I hear entrepreneurs talk about is just like this need to worry about the supply side before the demand side. And like worst case scenario, if you focus on demand side, like you were saying, trying to get sales, is you can just put them on a wait list, or and in many ways it increases demand because now you've got the scarcity principle taking effect where people are like, oh, I can't get this, I want it even more, versus the opposite where you're coming from the supply side and then maybe you have to figure out the pitch. So yeah, no, that's interesting to hear. So the other thing we kind of skipped over like the website part, but at this during the same time, you were obviously building out a website using Shopify. Um, so that was one avenue for kind of your sales funnel. I think you were hoping to hit was like going through the online market. Did you also reach out to board shops or physical retailer, like brick and mortar retailers, lessons providers? What were you seeing as your kind of sales funnel?
Yeah, I think we wanted to do online, obviously, because then you don't have to give a commission to retail shops, but I did reach out to a number of boat dealerships, and honestly, those conversations were a bit frustrating because I did find like we would talk to them and we'd tell them our price. And for context, like our boards we were selling at about like 17, 1800 Canadian. And a lot of boards are about $1,000 Canadian. And I remember just like the shops were like, this is way too much money. This is crazy. This is so expensive. But then I remember just, like, being like, "Well, you sell boats for, like, 300 grand." Like, these people who are buying these boards, like, just bought a boat for 300 grand for, like, a recreational thing. Like, I don't think the extra $700 is gonna kill them. Um, but, like, I did find when we were talking to the stores, like, it just none of them were really into wake surfing. So I would, like, explain why these boards were better, and, like, I just don't think they cared at all. Um so yeah, I think that was kind of like one thing that I found a bit frustrating was like just talking to these random boat dealerships in Alberta and like the random, sales managers, like they weren't really into wake surfing. They didn't care how good the boards were, things like that. So I think that was kind of like a point of frustration, I would say.
So kind of tough to sell people who aren't educated on why it's worth paying more for a board that doesn't feel like a fridge door.
Yeah, no, for sure. Like I think And when we got a lot of time, they're like, "Yeah, a lot of our customers just wanna, like, let go of the rope and take a photo with a beer in their hand." I was like, "Okay, well, fair, I guess, but, like, there's also probably a lot of customers who, like, don't want that and actually wanna get better." So, yeah, I think that was, like, also, um, yeah, a point of frustration, I would say.
Yeah, it's also interesting consumer psychology because I think you mentioned before, but this like approach of this is a premium market in the sense these people are buying $300,000 boats, but then at least up in the sales funnel, they're saying they don't want to pay $700 more. Um, so it is just kind of an interesting observation that like just because you're in a market that's selling something expensive doesn't mean they view each element of that kind of, I don't know what you call it, product group as being premium. It's almost like you need to bundle it in with like the boat sale or something. But
Yeah, something like that. I don't know, but yeah, so I found that part to be pretty frustrating.
yeah, so the other thing that was kind of cool was I know you worked with some big ocean surf photographers, and you had some photo shoots. Like, how'd that come about?
Yeah, again, because like the whole thing was like wanted to have like an ocean surf brand. So like I remember thinking about like, oh, let's reach out to local photographers and ask them to like recreate ocean surf vibe. But then I had the idea of like, well, let's just get ocean surfers on the wake surf board. So we ended up just sending some boards to Tahiti, um, where there's like ocean surfers, obviously, like some big pros. And then we worked with a photographer, Morgan Masson, who was going there, and he brought the boards with him. And then we like rented a boat for them, and then they went out and just rode the boards, and then we just had him take the photo. So honestly, all in, it was like pretty cool. Like I think it was good for like our brand identity to have like a bunch of photos that kind of like fit our vibe. It was probably a little bit more expensive than it should have been, but I do think it was I think having, like, bunch of good photos, that, like, really set up your vibe for, like, a consumer product is probably pretty important, so, yeah, and that was kinda cool just to, like our boards were, like, in Tahiti getting photos, and, like, we had a lot of very cool shots from it, so I think that was pretty cool.
Yeah, that was a cool photo shoot. Um, and I think you also, if I recall, launched at some point a like short movie. Is that and then you
Yeah.
watched it on YouTube?
Yeah, again, that was I kinda forgot about that, but that was, like again, in my naive youth, I kinda thought, like, selling product was as simple as like having good imagery and like a cool video, and then people would be like buying your product. And like, I think we worked with like a director and we like shot a short film, and it was kind of like inspired by like Yeti does all that stuff. And like, I don't know, it was cool. And like, on YouTube, I think it got like 30,000 views. So like it did pretty well, but it didn't really result in any board sales. So um, I think that was kind of a lesson I learned as well. Like I just thought like, oh, if you get views, people will buy your product and like the website will blow up. And I definitely think now it's like way more about building like connection with customers and like building a community than it is just like I think like, we've had a number of situations where like we've had like celebrities, like a couple celebrities with like I think one of them had like 1,000,000 followers, another of them had like 500,000 followers, and they wrote our board, and even in the description, we're like, "Preacher Wakesurf boards are awesome," and like it didn't even really result in like any more followers for us, um, which I thought was kind of surprising because I do know that like social media influencers, even if they have like 8,000 followers, get like paid a ton to do product placement, and here we had like someone with 500,000 basically like specifically saying like preacher wake surfboards are the best, and it didn't move the needle at all. um so again, that was kind of like another good lesson of just like you just have to like connect with the customers, I think. And it's like these these kind of like broad things like a video or like one random social media post like doesn't really move the needle at all.
So did you get more followers at least out of it, or like not really anything?
No, not really, to be honest. Like we would get way more followers by just like going on Instagram and like commenting on other people's stuff.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I have heard that like influencers can often be terrible at actually selling things because the customers are not at the right moment for purchasing. Whereas influencers who are maybe much more target or niche and specific, so say a tech review product, the value of an ad or a placement with someone there makes is a lot more valuable because the people there are already like watching their videos because they're interested and in that purchase, ready to purchase. Where an influencer with a million followers, maybe their followers don't even have a boat or have or involved in wake surfing, so it's like not doing a lot. So it is interesting. I have heard that from a few people now, but it is, yeah, it's definitely surprising when because you did get a fair bit of like traction, and wasn't it the Dancing with the Stars guy doing like a 360 or something at one point?
Yeah, like, it was like, Derek Hough from Dancing with the Stars. I think he has like 1,000,000 followers or something. He literally posted a reel of like him doing his first 360 on our board and like showing it was like you couldn't have paid for like a better reel. It was like beautifully edited and like it was like perfect. It was like, here's this guy doing a 360 on our board and like he posted it and like it didn't move the needle at all. So that definitely changed my like view on like how I don't know, how you posting on YouTube and Instagram, like, I definitely think it's way more about, like, interacting with people than it is about just, like, getting a bunch of views.
Yeah, I think you also did you try sending a board to, McDavid? Like, that was it just
Yeah,
disappeared into the ether?
yeah, I don't know, like, someone who's worked with the business, Jordan, like, knew someone who knew his girlfriend, and then we, like, sent a board to apparently his cottage, and then we just never heard of it ever again, so I have no clue. I think it was 2 boards, actually. So I have absolutely no clue what happened to those boards, but, we tried to send a few to McDavid.
Yeah, for context, we're talking about Connor McDavid, plays for the Oilers.
Yeah, yeah, the best hockey player in the world, and we thought we'd get him on the boards, and then, I don't know, they just someone either scammed us or they just, like, are sitting in a box in some, like, warehouse somewhere.
Yeah, I think well, then he posted wake surfing
I
videos
know,
later that summer on a different board, so it's like,
I
what's
know,
going on?
it hurt so bad, but yeah, so that was annoying.
Yeah. So, the other thing that was kinda interesting was you did have some success, I think, with, like, lessons and also sort of sponsoring riders. Is that kind of more in line of the approach of, like, hands-on, getting closer to the actual end user that you found success with? Or, like, how did that go?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, like, it was helpful to some extent, but again, I don't think the riders that we, like, got on boards and stuff, like, they weren't really out there, like, pushing product, so, like, it kind of again, it was one of those things where, like, we could get good views and people on it and commenting and stuff, but, like, it wasn't actually converting into sales. So, yeah, I think we were getting closer, um, but, yeah, it's still, like, again, it was just, like, this guy riding our board, like, on his own boat and then, like, posting a video, and it's like, that doesn't really do anything to, like, convince someone to, drop 1,500 US on a board. So yeah, again, I think we got closer, but it still wasn't, like, quite where it needed to be.
He did have some good ideas. I think he at one point, he was wanted to get a rent a helicopter or something like that.
Yeah, he did rent a helicopter at one point, but,
He actually
uh
rented it?
yeah, yeah, and he, like yeah, I don't know. He's no longer sponsored, unfortunately. He got, another another company, but,
Had some
yeah,
controversy surrounding
yeah, there was a lot of controversy surrounding him, so
it.
it kind of
Can you tell the story of the photo shoot or you no?
Oh, yeah, I think it's fine, like, yeah, we had this pro rider, and we were supposed to meet in Arizona to do a photo shoot, and then leading up to it, like, I bought him a plane ticket, and then it just goes radio silent, and he never shows up to the photo shoot, so I'm just like, "Okay," like, I don't know, I assumed he got scared or something, 'cause I'd never met him before, and then, like, 2 days later, he texts me, and he's just like, "Can we talk?" So he phones me or no, I somehow found out ahead of time that he got arrested. He was in jail. And then he phones me to explain, and he phones, and the first thing he says, he's like, "Well, my ex-girlfriend's kinda crazy." I was like, "Oh, no." So,
Say no more.
I don't know the detail. I mean, I like, is it great? No, but, like, we're trying to run a surf team, not like a choir, so I was like, "Yeah, you know what?" It would the details weren't like he didn't, like, beat up a girl or anything, he just, like I don't even remember exactly.
Misunderstanding.
Yeah, I don't the way he explained it was like she got scared because he went to her house or something. I don't know exactly, but I don't know. I mean, if you're building a surf team and no one's been arrested, it's probably not a very good surf team.
Yeah. So, the other angle, I know you had was the lessons. So that was something where you had reached out with partnerships to some American, um, kind of lessons providers. I know you had some success with, one in Miami, I think, selling some boards.
Yeah, so that was, like, again, the thought process was that with that is that, like, some people go out there and they, like, uh, do lessons where they take people out on the boat where you pay, like, 300 bucks an hour. So our thought was that if we got these lessons providers using our boards, then people would, like, try the boards and they would like them, and then they would wanna buy boards. So we partnered with a few places and we got, like, mixed results, but yeah, the one that we got the best was Miami. We sold a few through there. Um, but then what happened was the guy who was running it was Russian, and then he took his boat back to Russia. So then quickly our Miami arm became their Russian arm. So then
And I
we were
think
like,
Russia invaded Ukraine around this time too. So geopolitics really getting in the way of this business over
yeah,
and over
yeah.
again.
So then we were working with this Russian guy in Russia, and then he was just like going out and doing like photo shoots with our boards, and he was just doing them with like Russian girls, and they were just like in gowns, like in like a cathedral with our board and stuff. So it was I don't know, it was pretty cool, but it was very funny, like, we just thought we partnered with this Miami company, and all of a sudden our boards are in Russia. Um, so yeah,
So
it's,
subject to export controls, getting
yeah,
flagged at the
no,
border.
yes, no, exactly. So,
And
but,
I think you also, so other interesting thing was I believe you also had an influencer out of Switzerland, was it? Because I know you were looking at the European market for a while, and people were telling you you need to check out the Switzerland market. It's the biggest in Europe. And then you did some market research, and yeah, I think it was a little bit surprising some of the numbers, but yeah, maybe if you
yeah,
want to
well,
describe that.
the one thing that was I remember that is I spoke to some people in different European markets, and I was telling this guy in Switzerland, and he was like, dude, the wake boat market in Switzerland is crazy. He was like, it's way bigger than Germany and like Italy or whatever. He was like saying it's just like the best in Europe. And he was saying that like people in Switzerland have so much money and they're, spending all this money on boats. And he told me like per year how many boats get sold per capita, and I can't even remember what it was, but it was, like, higher than Germany and all that stuff, and he was like, "Man, it's the best market, best market." So then I had the number, and I just remember because we knew someone at the dealership in Edmonton who was selling Mastercraft boats in Edmonton, Alberta, and then we were talking, and I found out how many boats they sold, and just that one dealership alone in Edmonton sold, like, 10 times what Switzerland did, like, Switzerland had, like, way like, on a per capita basis, it was, like, 10 times more, and, like, Switzerland, like, people have so much more money. It was just, like so I remember just, like, hearing that statistic just being like, "Yeah, well, in Alberta, they spend all their money on boats." So, it was, like, nothing was comparable, but I thought that was kind of funny, but anyways, yeah, we sent the board to a guy in Switzerland, which again, I think we were getting closer, like, he taught snowboarding and wake surfing and stuff, and he really liked our board. He posted good photos and stuff. Um, but again, I think it only resulted in like one sale. And again, it was just kind of like that thing where it's like, it's just, you almost need like a salesman for your company talking to the people because it's like it would get us some views and stuff, but it wasn't converting into sales. Like, and you think about your own experience if you're online, like you see a cool photo with a cool board, you're like, oh, that's sweet, but like it's not gonna convince you to buy it. So I think that was an important process to learn as well. That like Same lesson learned that like just getting eyes on your product isn't going to result in sales.
Yeah. Yeah. So maybe like where you're at now, you've like had it up and going for a couple of years. You talked a little bit about the struggles of like finding, um, like obviously post COVID, maybe talk about that because I think like demand and supply really changed in the sense that when you talk to shops now, they seem to have like a glut of supply because during COVID, everyone was scrambling to get supply in. They solved that problem and now they're having trouble moving product. But also, one thing we didn't touch on that was kind of interesting too was I think the experience of why you wanted to go direct to consumer through the website because like dealing with the retail shops was actually like pretty challenging and expensive.
Yeah, I mean, so yeah, I would say that was definitely a trend we noticed where like a lot of dealerships overbought during COVID because they couldn't get any product. So then they weren't as interested in buying up more boards. But again, I think what I'd found was like again, these retail shops, like they want to take like 40% off the like top line. So it's like it's almost not even like you'd have to sell so many boards through retail to make it worth it. So I think that was kind of a big thing where we wanted to do direct to consumer. Um, and then as I said earlier, like it's just sort of like the knowledge gap where I don't think a lot of like the sales managers and stuff really understood what we were trying to do. Which is partly our fault for not educating, I guess, but like that was always just a hurdle. Um, and then yeah, I would say like post COVID, like again, I think the struggles with it, like again, I work on it with my sister, and obviously you're involved too, Taylor. But like, I would say I don't know. It's almost like sometimes I find like in a business like this where there's just like so many directions you can take things. And I think one thing is like we're not in a market like Austin or Scottsdale where like it's going year round and there's like this big scene. So almost like what I find is almost like through November, December, January, whatever we're in Canada, it's almost like there's so many things to do, but also like nothing to do because like we're not in contact with anyone. So and to be honest too, I think a lot of the challenge is like, we are working full-time jobs and it's like, I don't know, I wouldn't necessarily say time is the big issue, but it's almost tough to manufacture like the urgency to like push and push and push because like just to get a business going requires you to like push and pound the pavement and stuff. And like again, not making any excuses, but when it's just like, you know, a few friends who've started a product where they're all working full-time jobs, it's almost tough to manufacture that urgency to go out and do it. So I think, right now we still want to do the direct to consumer. I think what we want to focus on and what we've gotten good feedback on is that when we do these like free surf sessions, we get tons of people messaging us, tons of people signing up. When we take people out, they're always super grateful. And I think the one thing I've noticed is like when you take people out and we talk to them, like it's probably with any product, but when you're doing something for free and you can really connect with the person, like they tend to just really like your brand. Like we've got so many people who we took out for like a session and they message me to this day being like, how can we help? How can we help? And it was like they go way over the top trying to help. So I think that's probably I think what we're trying to shift more towards. We're thinking about trying to do lessons so we can have that direct contact with people, but sort of the theme of like my experience with this is like it's way more important to like build up community and like interact face to face with people than it is like a YouTube video with like 50,000 views. Like that doesn't move the needle at all. So I'd say that's kind of like the shift that we're probably trying to move towards as we go forward with it.
Yeah. Yeah. So my questions would be like, what's next? So you kind of described it a bit, but you're thinking just much more community involvement. And are you thinking of expanding the product line? Like, because there's one thing to get community involvement, and then there's another thing to have someone make the transition to buying a board. I know I've talked about this before, but like Patagonia, for example, seems like a case study that's very similar. Patagonia started off, they made like the best, what are they called? Like carabiners or those little hook things
Yeah.
that when you're climbing. Um, they made the highest quality ones. People loved them. All the climbers loved them, but they didn't have a large enough profit margin on them to like build a long-term sustainable business. So they ended up expanding into like soft goods, like climbing shirts, and that just blew up into all sorts of different product lines. And then those had much higher margins. So I know like you've got the board. I think you've got like easily the best board in the business, but it's tough to move enough boards because not everyone owns a boat or is surfing enough. So I'm curious, like what you see as next. I know you've discussed like lessons was one idea. Are you seeing more like lifestyle brand, like partnerships with boat dealerships? What are you seeing as like taking advantage of those like lessons from community building to kind of expanding, or are you seeing just more like leaning into what you've got? Like, what's your plans there?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we're ever gonna make a ton of money off this business if all we do is sell wake surf boards, so I think what you're saying makes sense. But yeah, I would say like the focus for sure is like trying to set up where we can do lessons, so make some money from that. But basically, it's just like marketing and like interacting with customers to try and sell more boards. Um, and then with that, I think like we've done a few like free surf sessions where we run ads and then people sign up. And then like that's really gotten us a lot of feedback. Like I know when we run like one ad, we'll get like 500 people signed up, which I think is pretty important. We get their emails and things like that. So I think doing that and then looking into like running some community like events kind of thing, like a surf regatta, kind of where we can like serve food and interact with people. I think that's kind of like the shift is really just like getting feet on the board and talking with the people and establishing a connection as opposed to like investing money on like internet is basically I think the focus.
Yeah. Yeah, because I know like you talked about like you probably wouldn't do an agency again, but I think that you did really hit the brand out of the park. Like I get so many people commenting on like they like the branding and they like the t-shirts. They just like they want to buy one to wear, like people who aren't even involved or even like really aware of the company. So I think that does show that like the branding effort you put in did pay off in a way. Like it wasn't just like I know like maybe it kind of sounded like something that you wouldn't do necessarily that way again, but it does seem like that investment did pay dividends for how people perceive kind of your products, though.
Yeah, no, I think that's a fair point that like it's easy to look at it now, but like if we had a shitty brand, then you'd easily be like, oh, should have done an agency. So, but yeah, no, I think definitely looking into other products, but I think that's going to be like a come after once we like increase that focus on like connection and building community and things like that.
Yeah. So, are you looking on taking investors or anything like that? Like,
No, not right
um,
now, because honestly, we have inventory built up. So I wouldn't say that's the focus, but I would say like we are definitely interested in like, potentially looking at like strategic partners. Um, just because like we're in Canada and I do think like right now, just like people in Canada just don't have a ton of disposable income. So I think like if we can get the right partners in like the key US markets, I think that's definitely a point of emphasis for us.
yeah. Awesome. Well, this has been cool. Where can people follow you or find you? I know you've got a website,
So
preacherwakesurf.com. Is that right?
yeah, preacherwakesurf.com and our Instagram handles are preacher wakesurf. So yeah, just check it out there.